The 17th slap split my lip. I tasted blood before I felt the sting, metallic and warm, dripping down my chin like shame made liquid. My head whipped to the side again, and somewhere in the blurred edges of my vision, I saw my son standing there. Just standing. His mouth hung open, but no words came out. No protection. No defense. Just silence. Trina's hand came down again. I'd lost count by then, but my mind, sharp despite the pain, kept a running tally. 14. 15.
16.
Each strike landed with a crack that echoed through the kitchen Walter and I had remodeled 30 years ago.
Today was his birthday.
I'd made his favorite, chocolate with cherry filling. The cake sat on the counter behind us, untouched, while his wife beat me like a stranger. "You think you can steal from me?" Trina screamed, her face twisted into something ugly. "You think because you're old, you can just take whatever you want." I tried to speak, but my jaw wouldn't cooperate. I wouldn't. Liar. Her palm connected with my cheek again, 17, and this time my knees buckled. "Would you have stayed silent if this happened to you? Tell me in the comments." "Trina, stop." Gregory finally found his voice, but it came too late and too weak. He didn't move toward me, didn't step between us. "Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story." My vision swam. I could hear Trina still yelling, something about $200 missing from her purse, something about me being a burden. But I wasn't listening anymore. I was remembering the day Walter died, when Gregory held me while I sobbed and promised he'd always take care of me. I was remembering every scraped knee I'd bandaged, every school lunch I'd packed. I was remembering the nights I worked double shifts at the diner so he could go to college. "Mom." Gregory's voice cracked. He took a half step forward, and for one desperate second, I thought he might actually do something. But then Trina turned on him, her finger jabbing the air. "Don't you dare take her side. She's been living under our roof for 2 years. It's my house," I whispered. The words fell into the space between us like stones. Trina's head snapped toward me. "What did you say?" I straightened up, tasting blood. "I said it's my house." She laughed. The sound was sharp and cruel. "Your house?" "Gregory, tell your mother she's confused." Gregory opened his mouth,
Closed it.
looked at me with eyes that held more confusion than loyalty. "Did you take the money, Mom?" he asked quietly. And there it was. The question that ended everything. Not, "Are you okay?" Not, "Did she hurt you?" Just that one devastating question. I didn't answer. Instead, I pushed past them both and climbed the stairs to my bedroom, the same bedroom where Walter proposed to me 48 years ago. I locked the door, sat on the edge of the bed, and for the first time in 15 years, I didn't cry. I just stared at the photograph of Walter on my dresser. "They think they've won," I whispered to his picture. My hands were steady as I opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand. Beneath old letters and prayer books, I pulled out a small metal lockbox. The key hung on a chain around my neck. I opened it. Inside lay a single piece of paper. The deed to this house. Both our names printed in elegant script. Paid in full. August 1998. Gregory's name was nowhere on it. They forgot who this house really belongs to. Before Trina, my life was small but full. That's what people don't understand about widowhood. It's not always about being lonely. Sometimes it's about finding peace in the quiet spaces your partner left behind. Walter's coffee mug still sat on the kitchen windowsill, holding pens now instead of morning brew. His flannel shirt hung in the closet, and on cold nights, I'd press my face into it just to remember what home used to smell like. The house was mine, and his. Every creaky floorboard, every water stain on the ceiling, every chip in the paint. We'd bought it for almost nothing back in 1977, when this neighborhood was just dirt roads and hope. Walter worked construction, and I cleaned houses during the day, waited tables at night. We scraped.
We saved.
We built something. Gregory grew up in the bedroom at the top of the stairs. I could still see the pencil marks on the doorframe where we'd measured his height every birthday. 5'2" at 12. 5'9" at 15. 6 feet even when he graduated high school with honors that made Walter cry. That boy was everything we did right in this world. He'd call me every Sunday after Walter died, without fail. We'd talk about his job at the engineering firm, about the weather, about nothing and everything. His voice always carried that warmth that reminded me he was still my son, still the boy who used to bring me dandelions and call them roses. Then he met her.
It was a company dinner, he said.
She worked in marketing. Trina Hayes. Pretty name for a pretty girl with sharp eyes and a smile that didn't quite reach them. Have you ever welcomed someone who later disrespected you? Drop your story below. The first time Gregory brought her meet me, I made pot roast. Spent all afternoon getting it right. Carrots soft but not mushy, potatoes golden, gravy thick enough to stick to the spoon. I even used the good china, the set my mother gave me when I got married. Trina walked through my door in heels that cost more than my monthly electric bill. She looked around like she was touring a museum, not meeting her boyfriend's mother. Her handshake was limp. Her smile was plastic. What a cozy little place, she said, and somehow made cozy sound like an insult. But Gregory's face was lit up like Christmas morning, so I smiled back and pretended not to notice the way she barely touched her food or how she checked her phone under the table. She's just nervous, Gregory whispered to me while helping with dishes. She really wants you to like her, Mom. I wanted to believe him.
God, I wanted to.
They got engaged 6 months later. Married 3 months after that. I wore my Sunday best to the wedding and gave them the heirloom necklace my mother left me, a delicate gold chain with a tiny pearl. Trina thanked me without looking at it twice. I never saw her wear it. For the first year, they seemed happy. They rented an apartment across town, visited for holidays, kept their distance in that healthy way young couples do. I thought maybe I'd been wrong about her. Maybe she just needed time to warm up. Then Gregory lost his job.
The company downsized, he said.
Budget cuts. Nothing personal. But suddenly they couldn't afford rent, couldn't keep up with car payments, couldn't manage the life they'd built on 2 incomes. Mom, Gregory said one evening, standing on my porch with Trina behind him, I hate to ask, but could we stay with you? Just temporarily. Just until I find something new. I looked at my son, 32 years old but still my baby, and saw the shame in his eyes. Of course, I said. This is your home. It'll always be your home. Trina smiled, but her eyes stayed cold. If someone tried to erase your memories from your own house, what would you do? Let me know. They moved in on a Tuesday. 2 weeks turned into 2 months. 2 months turned into 6. Gregory sent out resumes, went to interviews, came home defeated. Trina complained about everything, the water pressure, the internet speed, the way the floors creaked at night. This place is falling apart, she'd mutter. Not quite loud enough for Gregory to hear, but loud enough for me. Then the changes started. Small things at first. She rearranged the living room furniture, without asking. Moved my reading chair to the basement, because it didn't match the aesthetic. I found it down there a week later, covered in dust, and something inside me cracked a little. But I stayed quiet. That's what mothers do, right? We bend. We accommodate. We make space. I told myself it wasn't worth the fight. I told myself Gregory needed stability, needed to focus on finding work, needed a peaceful home. I told myself a lot of things that weren't true. One morning, I came downstairs to find Trina painting over the floral wallpaper in the hallway. The wallpaper Walter and I had chosen together on our 20th anniversary. We'd spent a whole Saturday putting it up, laughing when we got the pattern wrong, kissing between strips of paste and paper. What are you doing? My voice came out strangled. Trina didn't even turn around. Updating. This pattern is so outdated, Margaret. You'll thank me later. But I never did. She smiled sweetly at my son, but when his back turned, her eyes told a different story. 6 months in, and my house stopped feeling like mine. Trina moved through the rooms like a tornado with a credit card, erasing me one piece at a time. The floral wallpaper disappeared under coats of gray paint, cold, lifeless gray that made the hallway feel like a hospital corridor. My mother's crocheted throw blankets vanished from the couch, replaced by stiff decorative pillows nobody was allowed to actually use. "They're for aesthetic, Margaret," Trina said when I asked. "Not for sitting on." Walter's old armchair, the one he'd sat in every evening to read the paper, the one that still held the shape of him, ended up on the curb one morning while I was at my doctor's appointment. "It smelled like dust," Trina explained with a shrug. "We're doing you a favor. Old things carry bacteria." Gregory said nothing, just kept scrolling through job listings on his laptop, pretending not to hear me crying in the kitchen. The photographs came down next. Our wedding picture. Gregory's baby photos. The candid shot of Walter and me at the county fair, both of us sunburned and grinning, holding cotton candy. 40 years of memories removed from the walls and replaced with Trina's staged portraits, her in a white dress against fake autumn leaves, her and Gregory in matching outfits looking like strangers playing house. If someone tried to erase your memories from your own house, what would you do? I started spending more time in my bedroom. It was the only space she hadn't invaded yet, the only place that still smelled like my life instead of her expensive candles. But even there, I could hear them. Hear her complaining about the water heater, about the outdated kitchen appliances, about how embarrassing it was to tell her friends she was living with Gregory's mother. "It's temporary," Gregory would say, his voice tired. "You keep saying that," Trina would snap back. "It's been 6 months, Greg. 6 months of living in a nursing home." I wasn't deaf. I wasn't stupid. I just didn't know what to do about it. One Thursday evening, I heard unfamiliar voices downstairs. Laughter. Music. The clink of wine glasses. I crept to the top of the stairs and peered down. Trina had invited people over, 5 or 6 women I'd never seen, all dressed in expensive casual wear, all holding drinks in my good crystal glasses. "It's so vintage," one of them was saying, looking around. "Like a time capsule." "I know, right?" Trina's voice carried up the stairs. "We're basically stuck in the 70s. Greg's mom refuses to update anything. Well, you know how old people are. They get attached to junk." The women laughed. Polite, tinkling laughs that said they understood completely. My hands gripped the banister. My heart hammered against my ribs. "Why doesn't she just move to a home already?" another woman asked. "There are nice assisted living places. My grandmother loves hers." "Oh, trust me, I've suggested it," Trina said. "But she won't budge. This house is all she has." Kind of sad, really. The way she said sad, with that mix of pity and contempt, made my stomach turn. I retreated to my room before I heard more. Sat on my bed in the dark. Stared at nothing. That night, I heard Gregory come upstairs. His footsteps paused outside my door. I held my breath, hoping he'd knock. Hoping he'd ask if I was okay. Hoping he'd tell me he heard what Trina said, and he was sorry. But after a moment, his footsteps continued down the hall. I thought the house was big enough for 3 hearts. I was wrong. The next morning, I found a brochure on the kitchen table. Sunset Meadows Assisted Living, where comfort meets community. Someone had circled the pricing information in red pen. I didn't have to ask who left it there. Gregory's birthday arrived on a Tuesday, same as always. For 32 years, I'd made him the same cake, chocolate with cherry filling, the recipe my mother taught me before she died. He used to say it tasted like childhood, like every good memory wrapped up in buttercream frosting. I woke up early that morning before the sun, measured flour and sugar with the precision of ritual, cracked eggs into the mixing bowl, and watched the yolks bleed into white. The cherries, I'd bought them fresh from the farmer's market, spent extra to get the good ones, the kind that burst sweet and tart on your tongue. While the cake baked, I wrapped his gift. A watch. Not expensive, but meaningful. I'd had it engraved. To my son, always my heart. Maybe he'd remember. Maybe the boy I raised was still in there somewhere, buried under Trina's influence and his own shame. I placed the cake on the counter around noon, just as Gregory came downstairs. His face lit up when he saw it. "Mom, you didn't have to." "Of course I did," I said, and for a moment, we were just mother and son again. No tension. No Trina. Just us. Then she walked in. Trina's face was already twisted with anger before she even looked at the cake. She went straight to her purse on the counter, dumped the contents out. Lipstick.
Keys.
Receipts. A wallet. "Where is it?" she demanded. I blinked. "Where's what, dear?" "Don't play dumb with me, old woman." Her voice cut through the kitchen like a blade. "I had $200 in here this morning, and now it's gone." My heart dropped. "I haven't touched your purse, Trina." "I wouldn't." "Liar." She moved toward me, fast. "You're always lurking around, always in the way. I knew you'd pull something like this eventually." "Trina, calm down," Gregory said, but he sounded uncertain.
Weak.
"Would you forgive your child if they stood by while someone humiliated you?" "I don't need your money," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I have my pension. I have my savings. Why would I?" The slap came before I finished the sentence. My head snapped to the side. Pain exploded across my cheek. The room tilted. "Trina!" Gregory shouted, finally stepping forward. "What are you doing?" "She stole from me." Trina screamed, her face red, her eyes wild. "This woman's been living off us, and now she's taking our money too." Another slap. Then another. I tried to speak, tried to defend myself, but she kept hitting. My ears rang. My vision blurred. I counted them in my head because counting gave me something to hold on to, something to focus on besides the pain and the humiliation and my son's frozen face. 7.
8. 9.
"Mom." Gregory's voice sounded far away. Did you take it?" That question cut deeper than Trina's hand ever could.
10.
11. 12. I couldn't answer. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't believe my own son was asking me that. 13. 14. 15. My knees buckled. I grabbed the counter. The same counter where his birthday cake sat, perfect and untouched, and held on.
16.
17. Then she stopped, breathing hard, staring at me with something like satisfaction in her eyes. Blood dripped from my split lip onto the floor. Walter's floor. Our floor. Gregory stood there, pale and shaking, but he hadn't moved to protect me, hadn't pushed her away, hadn't chosen me. The sting of her hand faded, but my son's silence burned forever. I straightened up as much as I could, looked at them both, saw everything I needed to see. Then I turned and walked upstairs without a word. In my room, I locked the door, sat on the bed, touched my swollen face, and something inside me, something that had been bending for months, finally snapped into place. Tomorrow I will stop being the victim. Morning light came through my curtains like an interrogation lamp. I hadn't slept, just sat there all night, staring at Walter's photograph, feeling my face throb and my heart harden into something new. Something cold and clear and absolutely certain. At 7, I heard Trina's alarm go off, heard her shower running, heard Gregory's muffled voice asking if she was okay, if she wanted breakfast. Nobody knocked on my door. I waited until I heard Trina's car pull out of the driveway. She'd found work at some marketing firm downtown, the kind of job that let her feel superior to everyone around her. Gregory's footsteps retreated to the basement where he'd set up his office to keep job hunting. Then I moved. I packed a single bag. Not much, some clothes, my medications, Walter's photograph, the lockbox with the deed. Left everything else behind because things don't matter when you're reclaiming your life. The walk to Doris's diner took 15 minutes. My face hurt. My pride hurt worse. Doris saw me coming through the door, and her smile died instantly. "Jesus, Maggie," she breathed, coming around the counter. "What happened to your face?" I sat down at the corner booth, our booth, where we'd shared coffee and complaints for 20 years. Doris brought me a cup without asking, sat across from me, and waited. So I told her. All of it. The slaps. Gregory's silence. The question that ended everything. When I finished, Doris was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You ready to do something about it?" she asked quietly. I nodded. Sometimes justice doesn't shout, it plans. "Do you agree?" Doris let me stay in her spare room above the diner. It was small, just a bed and a dresser, and a window that looked out over Main Street, but it was mine. Nobody yelling. Nobody erasing me. That first night, I opened the lockbox again. Studied the deed like it was a treasure map. Because that's exactly what it was. The house, 2847 Maple Drive, was in mine and Walter's names only. We talked about adding Gregory after the wedding, but Walter had been cautious. "Let's see how things settle first," he'd said. "No rush." Then he died, and in the chaos of grief and funeral arrangements and learning to live alone, I'd simply forgotten. The deed stayed in the lockbox. Gregory and Trina moved in assuming the house would be theirs eventually, and I never corrected them because correcting felt mean. But assumptions I was learning could be weapons. Walter always said, "Never let anyone take your peace, Maggie." I finally understood what he meant. The next morning, I walked to the library, used their computer to search for real estate attorneys. Found one, Martha Chun, a woman about my age with kind eyes in her website photo. Her office was small but professional. She listened to my story without judgment, asked pointed questions about the deed, about Gregory's legal claim to the property. "He has none," she said finally. "The house is yours. You can sell it whenever you want. You don't need his permission, or even his knowledge." My hands trembled. "Even though he's living there?" "Even then. Though you'll need to give proper notice to vacate once you have a buyer. 30 days is standard." 30 days felt like forever. But it also felt like justice. "I want to sell it," I said. "As soon as possible." Martha nodded and pulled out paperwork. "I know a realtor who specializes in quick sales. Cash buyers. We can list it under your maiden name if you want discretion." "Margaret Walsh," I said. My name before Walter. My name before Gregory. My name when I was just myself. "Could you keep a secret this big from your own family?" We listed the house that afternoon. The realtor, a sharp woman named Kim, took photos while Trina was at work and Gregory was out at an interview. She pointed out the hardwood floors, the updated kitchen, the big backyard. "This'll sell fast," Kim said. "Great neighborhood. Good bones." I'd say 2 weeks, maybe 3. I signed the listing agreement with a steady hand. That evening, I went back to Doris's room and sat on the bed. Looked at Walter's photograph. "I'm doing it," I whispered. "I'm taking our house back." Somewhere across town, Gregory and Trina were probably eating dinner in my kitchen, sitting on my furniture, sleeping in my house. They had no idea the countdown had started. The offer came in on day 9. Kim called while I was having coffee at Doris's counter. "Margaret, you're not going to believe this. Cash offer. Full asking price. They want to close in 2 weeks." My hand shook so hard I had to set down my cup. 2 weeks. The buyers are relocating for work. They need somewhere fast. It's perfect timing. Perfect. That word tasted strange in my mouth, sweet and terrifying at once. "What do I need to do?" I asked. "Just sign the acceptance. I'll handle the rest." "But Margaret." Kim's voice softened. "Your son. Does he know?" "No," I said. "And he won't. Not until it's done." "Could you keep a secret this big from your own family?" The next 13 days were the longest of my life. I went back to the house twice. Once to get my important documents, once to collect a few more personal items. Both times I timed it for when Trina was at work. Gregory saw me the second time. He was in the kitchen making a sandwich, and when I walked in, his face went pale. "Mom," he said, "where have you been?" "I've been worried." Worried. The word almost made me laugh. He'd been worried, but not worried enough to call. Not worried enough to come looking. Not worried enough to apologize for watching his wife beat me and asking if I was a thief. "I've been staying with a friend," I said, keeping my voice neutral. "Trina feels terrible about what happened," he started, but I held up my hand. "I'm just here to get some things, Gregory. Then I'll be gone. You don't have to leave. This is your house. We can all talk, work this out." "Can we?" I looked at him directly. "Because last I checked, you asked me if I stole from your wife instead of asking if I was okay." His face crumpled. "Mom, I'm sorry. I was confused. I didn't know what to think." "You should have thought about who raised you," I said quietly. "You should have thought about the woman who gave you everything." I walked upstairs before he could respond. Packed my mother's jewelry box, Walter's military medals, our wedding album. Things that mattered. Things they couldn't erase. When I came back down, Gregory was sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. "I love you, Mom," he said without looking up. "I know," I said. And I left. Each smile I gave them was a countdown they didn't know had started. The days crawled by. I worked at Doris's diner during the lunch rush, keeping busy, keeping my hands occupied, so they wouldn't shake every time I thought about what was coming. Trina came in once. Didn't recognize me in the server's apron, or maybe didn't care enough to look closely at the help. She ordered a salad, complained about the dressing, left a $2 tip on a $15 check. I watched her through the window as she drove away in the car Gregory's father had helped him buy. Watched her check her makeup in the rearview mirror. Watched her smile at herself like someone who'd won. Not yet, I thought. But soon. Martha called on day 12. "Closing is set for Friday at 2. The buyers are bringing a cashier's check. After we pay off any liens, which there aren't any since the house is paid off, the remainder goes directly to you." "How much?" I asked. She named a figure that made my breath catch. Enough to buy a small place of my own. Enough to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Enough to never depend on anyone again. "There's one more thing," Martha said. "You need to provide notice to your son to vacate. Legally, 30 days from the closing date." "What if I give them less notice?" I asked. "Then they could potentially sue for unlawful eviction." "But, Margaret, if you hand them the notice the same day as closing, there's not much they can do. The house will already be sold. They'll have to leave either way." "Then that's what I'll do," I said. Thursday night, I couldn't sleep. Kept thinking about Gregory as a little boy, how he'd climb into bed with me and Walter during thunderstorms. How he'd hold my hand crossing the street. How he'd say, "I love you, Mama," in that sweet, unself-conscious way children have before the world teaches them to be careful with their hearts. Where had that boy gone? When had my son become a man who watched his mother get beaten and asked her if she deserved it? I didn't have answers. Just a deed, a closing date, and a decision I'd already made. Friday morning arrived with clear skies. I put on my Sunday dress, the navy blue one with the pearl buttons Walter always liked. Fixed my hair. Applied lipstick for the first time since the slapping. Doris hugged me at the door. "You sure about this?" "I've never been more sure of anything," I said. The closing took 45 minutes. Signatures. Notaries. Handshakes with the new owners. A young couple with a baby on the way, eyes full of hope. "We'll take good care of it," the wife said. "I know you will," I told her. And I meant it. When I walked out of that office, I had a check in my purse and a key in my hand, the key to 2847 Maple Drive, which I'd drop in the mailbox for the new owners later. But first, I had one more stop to make. A buyer makes a cash offer, closing in 1 week. I made breakfast one last time in that kitchen. 2 eggs scrambled, toast with butter, orange juice in the glasses Walter and I got as wedding gifts. I set everything on the table the way I had for 48 years, neat, careful, with a paper napkin folded beside each plate. Then I wrote the note. My hand cramped around the pen. I'd rewritten it a dozen times in my head over the past 2 weeks, but now that the moment was here, the words came easily. This was once our home. You made it your battleground. I've chosen peace. The new owner will be here by noon. Don't call me. I signed it simply, Mom. Not love, Mom. Not your mother. Just Mom. The title I'd earned, and the title they'd forgotten meant anything. I propped the note against the salt shaker, where Gregory couldn't miss it. Placed the house keys beside it. Looked around one last time at the kitchen where I'd raised my son, buried my husband's memory, and lost myself piece by piece. Would you have done the same, or stayed to face them? The morning light came through the window above the sink, the same window where Walter's coffee mug still sat, still holding pens. I picked it up, held it for a moment, put it in my bag. Some things you don't leave behind. Upstairs, I heard the shower running. Trina getting ready for work. Gregory would sleep another hour at least. He'd stayed up late the night before. I'd heard him pacing. I had maybe 20 minutes before she came down. I walked through the living room one last time. The gray walls that used to be floral. The stiff couch where my soft armchair used to sit. The blank spaces where family photos had hung. It didn't look like my home anymore. Hadn't for months. Maybe that made leaving easier. Maybe that was mercy. I opened the front door quietly. Stepped onto the porch where Walter proposed to me 50 years ago on a summer night that smelled like honeysuckle. The wood was weathered now, the paint peeling, but I could still see us there, young and stupid, and so certain love was enough. My hands trembled, not from fear, but from freedom. I walked down the steps, got into Doris's car. She'd lent it to me for the day. Started the engine, and I didn't look back. Behind me, the house sat quiet in the morning sun. Inside, a note waited on the kitchen table like a ticking bomb. Upstairs, my son slept in my house for the last time without knowing it. By noon, the new owners would arrive with their key and their paperwork and their legal right to that property. By noon, Gregory and Trina would be standing in what used to be my living room, finally understanding that assumptions aren't the same as ownership. By noon, I'd be gone. I drove to the cottage I'd rented, a tiny place by Miller Lake, 40 minutes from everything I'd known. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, a porch that faced the water. It was small. It was mine. It was enough. I unpacked Walter's photograph first, set it on the nightstand where I could see it, then his coffee mug on the kitchen windowsill, then my mother's jewelry box on the dresser. The cottage didn't have much, just the basics the landlord provided, but it felt more like home than 2847 Maple Drive had in 2 years. Around 11:30, my phone started ringing. Gregory's name flashed on the screen. Then again. Then again. I turned the phone face down and made myself a cup of tea. At noon exactly, a car pulled up to my cottage.
Doris, coming to check on me.
They know yet? She asked, settling into the porch chair beside me. They know, I said. We sat there in silence, watching the lake. Somewhere across town, my son was probably screaming. His wife was probably threatening to call the police. The new owners were probably standing their ground with deed in hand, legally untouchable.
And me?
I was drinking tea, breathing, existing without permission for the first time in 2 years. You did the right thing, Doris said quietly. I nodded. I know. My phone kept ringing. 8 calls. 12. 15. I didn't answer a single one. She walks out without looking back as the new owners arrive at noon. The voicemails started around 12:30. I didn't listen to them. Not at first. Just watched the notification numbers climb, 3, 7, 11, while I sat on my porch and watched the lake water catch sunlight like scattered diamonds. But curiosity is a powerful thing. And maybe some part of me needed to hear his voice one last time. Needed to know if he understood what he'd lost. At 3 o'clock, I finally pressed play. The first message was panic. Pure, unfiltered panic. Mom, what's going on? There are people here saying they own the house. They have paperwork. They're saying you sold it? Mom, call me back. Please. This has to be a mistake. The second was anger. How could you do this? How could you sell our house without telling us? Where are we supposed to go? Mom, call me right now. Our house. He'd said our house. Not your house. Not the house you owned. Our house, like he'd had any legal right to it. Like living somewhere made it yours. Should she answer her son's calls? What would you do? The third message was Trina, and her voice was venom. You bitter old witch. You did this because I disciplined you for stealing from me. You're pathetic. You're cruel. I hope you're happy ruining your son's life because you couldn't handle the truth about yourself. I deleted that one without finishing it. The fourth was Gregory again, and this time his voice cracked. Mom, please.
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I questioned you. I'm sorry for everything. But this is too far. We have nowhere to go. Trina's furious. She's talking about pressing charges. Mom, please, you're my mother. You're supposed to. I turned the phone off. You're supposed to. Those words echoed in my head like accusations. You're supposed to what? Take abuse? Stay silent? Let them erase me from my own life because that's what good mothers do?
No.
I was done with supposed to. Doris brought groceries that evening: milk, bread, eggs, coffee. The basics of starting over. Heard through the grapevine that Trina pitched a fit at the police station, she said, unpacking bags onto my tiny kitchen counter. Tried to file charges for illegal eviction. They told her there's nothing illegal about selling your own property. And Gregory? I asked. Packed up a U-Haul around 4. Saw them loading it myself when I drove past. Didn't look happy. I didn't see their faces, but I could hear their panic in my imagination. I pictured it anyway. Gregory's hands shaking as he packed boxes. Trina's face red with rage, barking orders, blaming him for trusting me. The new owners standing firm in the doorway, sympathetic but unmoved. I pictured my son loading his life into a truck, finally understanding what it felt like to lose a home. Part of me felt guilty. A small part, buried deep, that remembered rocking him to sleep and kissing scraped knees. That part whispered that maybe I'd gone too far. Maybe this was cruel. But the larger part, the part that remembered 17 slaps and one devastating question, felt nothing but calm. That night, I made myself dinner. Just pasta and Jared sauce, nothing fancy. Ate it on the porch while the sun set over the lake, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink that looked like hope. My phone was still off. Would stay off for a while. I wasn't hiding. I just didn't owe anyone explanations. Not anymore. Around 9, I heard a car on the gravel road leading to the cottage. My heart jumped. Irrational fear that somehow Gregory had found me, that he'd show up demanding answers. But it was just a neighbor driving past, headlights sweeping through the darkness before disappearing. I breathed again. Let my shoulders drop. This was my life now. Small. Quiet. Mine. I went inside, locked the door, and stood in the middle of my tiny living room. It wasn't much, just a couch, a lamp, a coffee table with scratches. Nothing like the house I'd left behind. But it was peaceful. God, it was peaceful. I slept that night better than I had in 2 years. No footsteps above me. No cruel whispers through walls. No son sleeping down the hall who'd proven he loved his wife more than his mother. Just silence. The good kind. The kind that heals. Gregory starts calling her nonstop. Voicemails filled with guilt and desperation. 3 weeks passed before I turned my phone back on. The voicemails had stopped at 27. The text messages numbered in the 50s. I didn't read them all. Just scanned enough to get the general progression: anger to bargaining to guilt to silence. The final text came 2 days after I'd turned the phone off. I understand now.
I'm sorry, Mom.
I love you. 7 words. Not enough to undo everything. Not even close. But something about seeing them there on the screen made my chest ache in that complicated way grief does when it's mixed with relief. Would you have picked up that call? I didn't respond. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Instead, I focused on building my new life. Small things. Simple things. I bought seeds at the hardware store, roses because Walter used to bring me one every Friday. Planted them in the little garden patch behind the cottage. My knees hurt from kneeling in the dirt, but it was a good hurt. The kind that came from creating instead of enduring. I joined the library, got a card with my name on it, Margaret Walshelridge, and checked out 3 books. Romance novels, the kind Trina used to mock as trashy. I read them on my porch with coffee, and no shame. I met my neighbors. Ruth, who lived 2 cottages down and made jam from the blackberries that grew wild near the lake. Tom, the retired teacher, who walked his dog past my place every morning and always waved. They didn't know my story, didn't know about Gregory or Trina or the house I'd reclaimed. They just knew me as Margaret, the quiet woman who'd moved in last month and kept roses. It was enough. One morning, about a month after I'd left, Doris drove out to visit. Brought fresh muffins and news. Saw your son yesterday, she said carefully, watching my face. He was at the bank. Looked rough. Rough how? I asked, not sure if I wanted to know. Tired. Older. Like he'd been through something. Doris paused.
He asked about you.
Asked if I knew where you were. My heart skipped. What did you say? Told him you were safe. That's all he needed to know. I nodded, set down my coffee, stared at the lake. He's staying at a motel near Route 12, Doris continued. Working temp jobs. Trina left him. That last part shouldn't have surprised me, but somehow it did. She left. About 2 weeks ago. Apparently, she blamed him for losing the house. Told him she didn't sign up to be poor. Just packed her stuff and moved in with some friend in the city. I closed my eyes. Tried to feel something, satisfaction, maybe, or vindication. Instead, I just felt tired. He brought that on himself, I said quietly. I know, Doris said. But he's still your son. He stopped being my son the moment he asked if I was a thief. Doris didn't argue. Just squeezed my hand and changed the subject. That afternoon, I did something I hadn't done since Walter died. I went to the cemetery. His grave was under an oak tree on the south side, the plot we'd picked out together when we were too young to really understand what we were planning for. The headstone was simple: his name, his dates, and the words, beloved husband and father. I sat in the grass beside it, traced my fingers over the carved letters. I did it, Walter, I whispered. I took the house back. I left them both. The wind moved through the oak leaves. Somewhere nearby, a bird sang. I don't know if you'd be proud or disappointed, I continued. I don't know if I did the right thing. But I know I couldn't keep living that way. I couldn't keep disappearing. The tears came then. Not sad tears exactly. Just release. Everything I'd been holding inside for 2 years, spilling out onto the grass of a cemetery where my husband rested and couldn't answer. But maybe that was okay. Maybe I didn't need answers. Maybe I just needed to know I'd survived. One morning, my phone buzzed again, Gregory's name on the screen. I stared at it, watched it ring and ring and ring. My thumb hovered over the answer button. Then I set the phone down and let it go to voicemail. Not today. Maybe not tomorrow either. Maybe someday, when the hurt was less sharp and the memories less bitter, I'd pick up. I'd let him explain. I'd tell him about the cottage and the roses and the quiet life I'd built from the ashes of the one he'd helped destroy. Maybe. But for now, I chose myself.
Chose peace.
Chose the sound of silence where there used to be screaming. She lifts the phone, but lets it ring out. The letter arrived on a Tuesday, 3 months after I'd sold the house. Not from Gregory, from a lawyer. My stomach dropped when I saw the return address. Certain Trina had found some way to sue me after all. But when I opened it, the words inside weren't about lawsuits or evictions. They were about Trina's purse. Specifically, about the $200 she'd accused me of stealing. The letter explained that a cleaning crew had found the money weeks later, wedged between the couch cushions in what used to be my living room. The new owners had turned it over to the police. The police had tracked down Trina. Trina had been forced to admit, on record, that I'd never stolen anything. The lawyer, representing the police department, was writing to inform me that I could press charges if I wanted. For assault. For defamation. For making a false police report. I read the letter 3 times. Then I folded it carefully and tucked it into my desk drawer. I wasn't going to press charges. Not because Trina deserved my mercy, she didn't. But because pressing charges meant staying connected. Meant court dates and lawyer fees and reliving that kitchen and those 17 slaps over and over. I was done reliving. I was finally living forward. If you believe dignity is the truest revenge, hit the like button and subscribe for more stories like this one. That same afternoon, I wrote a letter of my own. Not to mail.
Just to write.
Something I needed to say even if no one ever read it. Dear Gregory, it started. I forgive you. Not because you've earned it. Not because you've apologized enough. But because carrying anger is exhausting and I'm tired of being tired. You were my whole world once. My purpose. My pride. Watching you grow was the greatest joy of my life, and watching you choose her over me was the greatest heartbreak. But here's what I've learned. You can love someone and still walk away. You can forgive someone and still refuse to let them hurt you again. I don't know if we'll talk again.
I don't know if I want to.
What I do know is that I'm okay now. I'm okay in a way I haven't been in years. I have a cottage by a lake. I grow roses. I drink my coffee slow. I read books without anyone mocking me. I exist without permission. That's enough. Maybe someday you'll understand why I did what I did. Maybe you already do. Either way, I hope you find your way back to the boy I raised. The kind one, the brave one, the one who used to hold my hand crossing streets. I hope you find yourself again. But I don't need to be there when you do. Love always, even from a distance, Mom. I set the letter beside Walter's photograph. Looked at both of them. My past and my present. I'm free, I whispered. And for the first time in a long time, I meant it. The final truth is this. Justice doesn't always thunder. Sometimes it whispers, soft and certain and impossible to ignore. Sometimes it looks like an old woman walking away from the people who hurt her, carrying nothing but a bag and a deed and the knowledge that she deserves better. Sometimes it looks like silence where there used to be screaming. Sometimes it looks like roses growing in new soil. I learned through a neighbor, months later, that Gregory had moved to another state. Started over. Found work as an engineer again.
I didn't ask more than that. Didn't need to.
Trina, I heard, moved 3 times in 6 months. Never stayed anywhere long. Never found whatever she was searching for in other people's homes and other people's lives. And me? I stayed right here. In my cottage. With my lake and my roses and my quiet. I wake up when I want. Eat what I want. Speak when I want and stay silent when I don't. No one tells me I'm too old, or too much, or too in the way. No one slaps me. No one questions my worth. I'm 76 years old, and I finally understand what Walter meant when he said, "Never let anyone take your peace, Maggie." Peace isn't the absence of conflict. It's the presence of self-respect. It's knowing when to fight and when to walk away. It's understanding that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is choose yourself. I chose myself, and I'd do it again. Every time. She smiles faintly and whispers, "I'm free." If this story moved you, if you believe that dignity is the truest form of revenge, then subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. We share real stories about real people who found their strength in the darkest moments. Drop a comment below telling us what you would have done in Margaret's shoes. Your story might inspire someone who needs to hear it today. Thank you for being part of this family. Until next time, choose yourself.
Choose peace.
Choose freedom.